A Plea for the Christians by St. Athenagoras. Chapter 1. Great rulers, the nations in your empire have different customs and laws. No one is stopped by law or by fear of punishment from following the customs of his ancestors, no matter how foolish those customs may be. A person from Ilium calls Hector a god. He also worships Helen as a Drestia. A Spartan worships Agamemnon as Zeus, and also worships Philonie, the daughter of Tynadris. A person from Tenedos worships Tennis. An Athenian offers sacrifices to Erechtheus as Poseidon. The Athenians also hold religious ceremonies and secret celebrations for Agrilas and Pandrosus, even though these women were considered guilty of acting against the gods because they opened the box. In short, people in every nation are allowed to offer whatever sacrifices they choose and hold whatever religious ceremonies they wish. The Egyptians even count cats, crocodiles, snakes, poisonous snakes, and dogs among their gods. You and your laws allow all these people to worship in this way. You believe that having no belief in any god is wicked. At the same time, you believe that each person should worship whichever gods he prefers, so that fear of a god may keep people from doing wrong. But why do you hate us simply because of our name? Do not be misled by rumors as the crowd is. A name does not deserve hatred. A person deserves punishment only when he has actually done something wrong. We admire your kindness and gentleness, your peaceful character, and your goodwill toward everyone. Under your rule, individuals enjoy equal rights. Cities receive equal respect according to their position. Your wise leadership has brought deep peace to the whole empire. But you have not shown the same care for us who are called Christians. We do nothing wrong. In fact, as the rest of this speech will show, no one is more devoted to God or more loyal to your government than we are. Yet you allow us to be attacked, robbed, and persecuted. The crowds wage war against us for one reason only. We are called Christians. We therefore dare to present our case to you. From this speech, you will see that we suffer unfairly and against all law and reason. We ask you to consider our case also, so that we may finally stop being killed because of false accusers. Our persecutors do not merely fine us and take our property. Their insults do not merely harm our reputation, and the damage they do is not limited to any of our other important interests. We do not place much value on these things, even though most people consider them very important. We have learned not to strike back when someone strikes us. We do not take those who rob and steal from us to court. When someone strikes one side of our face, we offer the other side also. When someone takes our coat, we give him our cloak as well. But even after we give up our property, our enemies still attack our bodies and souls. They pour out a flood of accusations against us. They charge us with crimes that we have never committed or even thought about. In reality, those crimes belong to the foolish people who accuse us and to everyone like them. Chapter 2. If anyone can prove that we have committed a crime, whether small or great, we do not ask to escape punishment. We are ready to suffer even the harshest and most merciless punishment. But the situation is different when the accusation concerns only our name. Until now, the stories told about us have been based on nothing more than the careless rumors of the crowd. No Christian has been proven guilty of these crimes. Therefore, great, kind, and highly educated rulers, it is our duty to use the law to end this shameful treatment. Then we also may benefit from your kindness, just as people in cities throughout the world do. We may be grateful to you and rejoice that we are no longer the victims of false accusations. Your sense of justice should not allow other people to be punished only after they have been proven guilty, while Christians are punished simply because of the name they carry. In our trials, the name Christian seems to matter more than the evidence. Instead of asking whether the accused person has actually committed a crime, judges insult the name itself as though being called a Christian were already a crime. But a name is not good or bad by itself. A name appears good or bad only because of the good or bad actions connected with it. You understand this clearly because you are well educated in philosophy and every kind of learning. Even people brought before you on the most serious charges are not afraid. They know that you will examine how they have lived. They know that you will not be influenced by meaningless names or by written accusations if those accusations are false. They accept either a guilty or not guilty verdict because they trust that your judgment will be fair. We therefore ask for the same right that everyone else receives. Do not hate or punish us simply because we are called Christians. The name itself does not make us bad people. Instead, examine every accusation brought against us. If we prove that the charges are false, release us. If someone proves that we have committed a crime, punish us for the wrong we have done, not for the name Christian. No one who truly follows Christian teaching is a bad person. Only someone who falsely claims to follow our teaching can live that way. This is also how philosophers are judged. Before a trial, a judge does not decide that a philosopher is good or bad simply because he studies philosophy. If the man is found guilty of wickedness, he is punished, but philosophy itself is not blamed. The man is bad because he did not practice philosophy in the proper way, while philosophy itself remains innocent. If he proves that the accusations are false, he is released. Give us the same fair treatment. Examine the lives of the accused, but do not treat the name Christian as a crime. At the beginning of my defense, I ask you, great emperors, to listen fairly. Do not let the foolish talk of the crowd carry you away or cause you to decide the case before examining it. Instead, use your love of knowledge and truth to examine our teaching also. Then you will not make a mistake because of ignorance. We will also be able to disprove the accusations that come from the careless rumors of the crowd, and the attacks against us may finally end. Chapter 3. We are accused of three things: atheism, eating human flesh at feasts like Thyestes, and having incestuous sexual relations like Oedipus. If these accusations are true, then do not spare any of us. Punish our crimes immediately. Destroy us completely, together with our wives and children, if any Christian is found living like a wild animal. Yet even wild animals do not eat the flesh of their own kind. They mate according to the law of nature, and only at the proper season, not simply because of uncontrolled desire. They also recognize those who care for them. Therefore, if anyone behaves more cruelly than a wild animal, what punishment could possibly be severe enough for such crimes? But suppose these accusations are only empty stories and false lies. Such lies arise because goodness naturally opposes evil, and opposites fight against one another according to a divine law. You yourselves know that we do not commit these crimes, since you do not allow formal accusations of these things to be filed against us. Therefore, examine how we live and what we believe. Examine our loyalty and obedience to you, your family, and your government. Then give us the same rights enjoyed by the people who persecute us. We ask for nothing more. If you do this, we will defeat them by willingly giving up, as we do now, even our lives for the sake of the truth. Chapter 4. I will first answer the accusation that we are atheists. I will answer each accusation separately so that no one may laugh at us as though we have no defense. The Athenians were right to find Diagoras guilty of atheism. He revealed the secret teachings of Orpheus. He made the mysteries of Eleusis and the Kabiri public. He cut up the wooden statue of Hercules and used it as firewood to boil his turnips. He also openly declared that no God existed at all. But we clearly separate God from matter. God is one thing and matter is another. There is a great difference between them. God was not created and has always existed. He can be known only through mind and reason. Matter, however, was created and can be destroyed. How then can anyone reasonably call us atheists? If we believed as Diagoras did, then we would deserve to be blamed. We have so many reasons to believe in God: the order of the universe, the harmony of everything within it, its great size, its colors, its shapes, and the way all its parts have been arranged. If we ignored all this and denied that God existed, then we ourselves would be responsible both for our reputation for having no faith and for the persecution we suffer. But our teaching recognizes one God, the maker of the universe. God himself was not created. Something that already exists does not begin to exist. Only something that did not exist before can begin to exist. God made everything through the Logos, who comes from him. Therefore, it is unreasonable that we are both falsely accused and persecuted. Chapter 5. Poets and philosophers have asked questions about God, yet no one has declared them atheists for doing so. When Euripides speaks about the beings whom ordinary people mistakenly call gods, he speaks with doubt. If Zeus indeed does reign in heaven above, he ought not to on the righteous ills descend. But when he speaks about the one whom the mind can truly know, he speaks clearly and with confidence. Do you see on high him who, with humid arms, clasps both the boundless ether and the earth? Him reckon Zeus, and him regard as God. Translated, seest thou this boundless ether on high which embraces the earth in its moist arms? Reckon this Zeus. Euripides did not see any real beings behind the names of these supposed gods. For example, he did not know who Zeus truly was. He knew only the stories people told about Zeus. He also did not believe that these names had been given to beings who really existed. What use is a name when there is no real being behind it? But Euripides did see God through the things God had made. He looked at the visible things in the air, the heavens, and the earth, and through them he thought about the God who cannot be seen. He therefore understood that God is the one from whom all created things come and whose spirit governs them. Sophocles agrees with him. There is one God, in truth there is but one, who made the heavens and the broad earth beneath. Euripides is speaking about the nature of God, who fills everything he has made with beauty. He teaches both where God must be found and that there can be only one God. Chapter 6. Philolaus also teaches that God is one and greater than matter. He says that all things are contained within God as though they were inside a strong fortress. Lysis and Opsimus describe God in different ways. Lysis says that God is a number that cannot be expressed. Opsimus says that God is the amount by which the greatest number is greater than the number just below it. According to the Pythagoreans, 10 is the greatest number. They call it the tetractys because it contains all the basic principles of numbers and harmony. 9 comes immediately before 10. Therefore, God is a unit, that is, 1, because 10 is greater than 9 by 1. Then there are Plato and Aristotle. I am not going to review everything the philosophers have said about God, as though I want to give a complete summary of all their opinions. I know that you are greater than all other men in intelligence and in your power to rule. In the same way, you also surpass them in your accurate knowledge of every kind of learning. You study each subject more successfully than even those who have devoted themselves entirely to one field. However, I cannot show that we are not the only people who believe that God is one unless I mention some names. For this reason, I have dared to list some of their opinions. Plato says, "To find out the maker and father of this universe is difficult, and when found, it is impossible to declare him to all." By this, he teaches that there is one uncreated and eternal God. Plato also recognizes other beings, such as the sun, moon, and stars, but he says that they were created, gods, offspring of gods, of whom I am the maker and the father of works which are indissoluble apart from my will, but whatever is compounded can be dissolved. Therefore, if Plato is not an atheist because he believes in one uncreated God, the maker of the universe, then neither are we atheists. We acknowledge and firmly believe that the true God is the one who made everything through the Logos and keeps everything in existence through his Spirit. Aristotle and his followers also recognize one God. However, they think of him as a kind of living being made of different parts. They believe that God has both a soul and a body. They say that his body is the heavenly region, including the planets and the sphere of the fixed stars moving in circles. They say that his soul is the reason that directs the movement of his body. This reason does not move, but it causes everything else to move. The Stoics also give God many names according to the different changes in matter. They say that the Spirit of God fills all matter, yet in reality they believe that God is one. They say that God is an intelligent fire that moves forward in an orderly way and produces each thing in the world. They believe that he contains within himself all the seed-like principles through which everything is produced according to fate. They also say that his spirit fills the whole world. Therefore, according to them, God is one. They call him Zeus in relation to the burning part of matter, Hera in relation to the air, and by other names according to whichever part of matter he fills. Chapter 7. Almost everyone admits, even if unwillingly, that God is one when they discuss the first causes of the universe. We also declare that the one who arranged this universe is God. Why then are poets and philosophers allowed to say and write whatever they please about God without being punished, while a law is enforced against us? We can prove with true evidence and sound reasoning that we understand and rightly believe that there is one God. Poets and philosophers have approached this subject just as they have approached other subjects, by guessing. Their souls have some connection with the breath that comes from God. Because of this, each one was moved by his own soul to see whether he could discover and understand the truth. But they were unable to understand it fully. They chose to learn about God not from God, but from themselves. Therefore, each person reached his own conclusion about God, matter, forms, and the world. But we have the prophets as witnesses of the things we understand and believe. These were men who spoke about God and the things of God while being guided by the Spirit of God. You are more intelligent than others and deeply devoted to the true God. Therefore, you will agree that it would be unreasonable for us to stop believing in the Spirit who comes from God, who moved the mouths of the prophets as a musician plays musical instruments, and instead listen to mere human opinions. Chapter 8. Now consider the teaching that there has been from the beginning one God, the maker of this universe,
In this way, you may also understand the reasoning behind our faith. If there had been two or more gods from the beginning, they would have either existed together in the same place, or each one separately in his own place. They could not have existed together in the same place. If they are gods, they cannot be alike. Because they are uncreated, they must be different from one another. Created things resemble the patterns from which they were made. But uncreated beings cannot resemble one another because they were not made by anyone and were not formed according to anyone's pattern. A hand, an eye, and a foot are parts of one body, and together they make one man. Is God one in this way? Socrates was made of different parts and could be divided into parts because he was created and could die. But God was not created, cannot suffer, and cannot be divided. Therefore, he is not made of parts. But suppose that each God exists separately. The one who made the world is above everything he created and is present around the things he made and arranged. Where then could the other God or gods exist? The world was made round and is enclosed within the circles of heaven. The creator of the world is above created things and governs them through his care. What place is left for a second God or for the gods? A second God cannot be inside the world because the world belongs to the first God. He also cannot be around the world because God, the maker of the world, is already above it. But if he is neither inside nor around the world, since everything surrounding the world is occupied by the one God, where is he? Is he above the world and above the first God? Is he in another world or around another world? If he is in or around another world, then he has nothing to do with us because he does not govern our world. His power would also not be very great because he would exist inside a limited place. But if he is not in another world because all things are filled by the first God and not around another world because all things are occupied by the first God, then he clearly does not exist at all. There is no place in which he could exist. What could he do since the world belongs to another and the first God is above the maker of the world while he himself is neither inside nor around the world? Is there some other place where he can stand? But God and everything belonging to God are already above him. What place could that be, since the other God fills the regions above the world? Perhaps he takes care of creation? Certainly not. But if he does not take care of creation, then he does nothing. Therefore, if he does nothing, takes care of nothing, and has no other place in which to exist, then the being of whom we speak is the one God who has existed from the beginning and the only maker of the world. Chapter 9. If we were satisfied with presenting only arguments like these, some people might think that our teaching is merely human, but the voices of the prophets confirm our arguments. I believe that you, with your great desire for knowledge and excellent education, cannot be unfamiliar with the writings of Moses, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and the other prophets. These men were lifted above the normal activity of their minds by the power of the divine Spirit. They spoke the things with which they were inspired. The spirits used them, just as a flute player breathes into a flute. What then do these men say? The Lord is our God, no other can be compared with him. And again, I am God, the first and the last, and besides me there is no God. Likewise, before me there was no other God, and after me there shall be none. I am God, and there is none besides me. Concerning his greatness, heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool of my feet. What house will you build for me, or what is the place of my rest? But I leave it to you, when you obtain the books themselves, to examine carefully the prophecies they contain. Then you will have good reasons for defending us from the insults directed against us. Chapter 10. I have clearly shown that we are not atheists because we acknowledge one God. He was not created and has always existed. He is invisible, cannot suffer, cannot be fully understood, and has no limits. He can be known only through the mind and reason. He is surrounded by light, beauty, spirit, power, and greatness that cannot be described. Through his logos, he created the universe, arranged it, and keeps it in existence. I say his logos because we also acknowledge a Son of God. No one should think it is foolish to say that God has a son. The poets, in their made up stories, describe their gods as no better than human beings, but we do not think about either God the Father or the Son in the same way they do. The Son of God is the Logos of the Father, both in thought and in action. All things were made according to him as their pattern, and through him. The Father and the Son are one. The Son is in the Father, and the Father is in the Son. They are united in the oneness and power of the Spirit. The mind and reason of the Father is the Son of God. But because of your excellent intelligence, you may ask what we mean when we call him the Son. I will explain briefly. He is the first product of the Father, but not because he was brought into existence. From the beginning, God, who is the eternal mind, had the Logos within himself because he has always possessed reason. Rather, the Son came forth to be the pattern and active power of all material things. Matter was like a nature without qualities, and like an active earth, with its heavier and lighter parts mixed together. The prophetic spirit also agrees with what we say. The Lord, it says, made me, the beginning of his ways to his works. We also say that the Holy Spirit, who works through the prophets, flows out from God and returns to him like a ray from the sun. Who then would not be amazed to hear men called atheists who speak of God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and who explain both their united power and their distinct order? Our teaching about the divine nature is not limited to these things. We also recognize a great number of angels and servants. God, the maker and creator of the world, assigned them to their different places through his logos. He appointed them to care for the elements, the heavens, the world, everything within the world, and the good order of them all. Chapter 11. Do not be surprised that I explain our teaching carefully. I am doing this so that you will not be carried away by the popular and unreasonable opinion about us. I want the truth to be clear to you. We can persuade you not to think of us as atheists by showing you the teachings we follow. These teachings did not come from human beings. They were spoken and taught by God. So what are the teachings in which we are raised? I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven, who causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. Allow me to speak boldly here, since I am pleading before rulers who love philosophy. Think about the philosophers and teachers who explain logical arguments, difficult expressions, word origins, words with the same meaning, words with related meanings, categories, axioms, subjects, and predicates. They promise that by teaching these things, they will make their students happy. But which of them has purified his soul so much that he loves his enemies instead of hating them? Which of them blesses the people who insult him instead of speaking badly about them? Simply refusing to insult them back would already show great patience. Which of them prays for the people who are plotting to kill him? Instead, many of them use their skill with words for harmful purposes. They keep searching deeply into the secrets of their art, but with evil intentions. They are always looking for ways to cause harm. Their work is clever speech, not good action. But among you, you will find people with no formal education, workers, and old women. They may not be able to prove the value of our teaching with speeches, but they show its value through their lives. Their actions show the good that comes from truly believing our teaching. They do not recite impressive speeches, they show good works. When they are struck, they do not strike back. When they are robbed, they do not take the robber to court. They give to those who ask them. They love their neighbors as themselves. Chapter 12. Would we cleanse ourselves from evil in this way if we did not believe that God watches over the human race? Certainly not. We believe that we will give an account of everything we do in this present life to God, who made us in the world. Because of this, we choose a self-controlled and kind way of life, even though most people would look down on it. Even if our lives are taken from us here, we do not think that we have suffered any great evil. What we suffer here cannot compare with what we will receive from the great judge because we have lived with gentleness, kindness, and self-control. Plato said that Minos and Rhadamanthus will judge and punish the wicked, but we say that even if a man were Minos or Rhadamanthus, or even their father, he still would not escape God's judgment. Some people think life is summed up in this: let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. They think death is like deep sleep and complete forgetfulness. They even call sleep and death twin brothers. Should those people be considered religious, and should we not be considered religious? We think this present life is worth very little. We are guided toward the future life by this one thing: we know God and His Logos. We know the unity of the Son with the Father. We know the fellowship of the Father with the Son. We know what the Spirit is. We know the unity of these three: the Spirit, the Son, and the Father, and we know their distinction within that unity. We also know that the life we hope for is far better than words can describe, as long as we reach it free from every wrong action. Our kindness goes so far that we do not love only our friends. For he says, "For if you love them," he says, "that love you, and lend to them that lend to you, what reward will you have?" Since this is our character, and since we live this way so that we may escape condemnation in the end, should we not be considered religious? These examples are only small parts taken from greater things. Here are a few examples out of many, because I do not want to test your patience any further. When people taste honey or whey, they can judge from a small amount whether the whole thing is good. Chapter 13. Most people who accuse us of atheism do so because they do not have even the faintest understanding of what God is. They are foolish and completely ignorant about both nature and divine things. They measure religion by sacrifices. Because of this, they accuse us of not worshipping the same gods as their cities. Please listen, emperors, while I answer both parts of this accusation. First, I will answer the charge that we do not offer sacrifices. The Creator and Father of this universe does not need blood. He does not need the smell of burned offerings. He does not need the fragrance of flowers or incense. He himself is the perfect fragrance. He needs nothing from within himself and nothing from outside himself. The best sacrifice we can offer him is to know who he is. He is the one who stretched out the heavens and shaped them into a great arch. He fixed the earth in its place like the center of a circle. He gathered the waters into seas. He separated light from darkness. He decorated the sky with stars. He caused the earth to produce every kind of seed. He made the animals. He formed mankind. We believe that God is the creator of all things. He keeps all things in existence and watches over them with knowledge and wise care. So when we lift holy hands to him, why would he also need the sacrifice of 100 animals? Some say that when human beings sin or fail to do what is right, the gods can be calmed by sacrifice, prayer, drink offerings, and burnt offerings. But what do I have to do with whole burnt offerings when God does not need them? What we should offer him is a bloodless sacrifice and the worship of our reason. Chapter 14. Now let us answer the other complaint, that we do not pray to the same gods as the cities or believe in them. This complaint is extremely foolish. The very people who accuse us of atheism because we do not accept their gods cannot even agree with one another about who the gods are. The Athenians have made Silius and Metaneira into gods. The Spartans worship Menelaus. They offer sacrifices to him and hold festivals for him. But the people of Ilium cannot even bear to hear his name. They worship Hector instead. The people of Ceos worship Aristeus and consider him the same as Zeus and Apollo. The people of Thasos worship Theogenes, even though he committed murder at the Olympic Games. The people of Samos worship Lysander despite all the killings and crimes he committed. Alcman and Hesiod worship Medea. The people of Cilicia worship Niobe. The Cilicians worship Philip, the son of Butacides. The people of Amathus worship Anicetus. The Carthaginians worship Hamilcar. I would run out of time if I tried to list them all. Since they disagree among themselves about their own gods, why do they accuse us because we do not agree with them? Then look at the custom of the Egyptians. Are they not completely ridiculous? During their solemn festivals in the temple, they beat their chests as though mourning for the dead. yet they offer sacrifices to those same beings as gods. This is not surprising since they treat animals as gods. When these animals die, the Egyptians shave themselves, bury the animals in temples, and mourn for them publicly. So if we are guilty of irreverence because we do not practice the religion the way they do, then every city and every nation is guilty of irreverence. They do not all worship the same gods. Chapter 15. But suppose they all did worship the same gods. What would that prove? The crowd cannot tell the difference between matter and God. They do not understand how great the distance is between them. Because of this, they pray to idols made from physical materials. But we separate what is uncreated from what is created. We separate what truly exists from what does not truly exist. We separate what is understood by the mind from what is known through the senses. We give each one its proper name. Should we then come and worship images? If matter and God are the same thing, and the two words are only two names for one reality, then we are certainly guilty of irreverence when we refuse to treat wood, stone, gold, and silver as gods. But if God and matter are completely different from each other, as different as an artist is from the material he uses, then why are we being accused? The relationship between God and matter is like the relationship between a potter and clay. Matter is like the clay. God, the maker of the world, is like the potter. Clay cannot turn itself into pottery without the skill of the potter. In the same way, matter can receive every kind of form, but it could not receive distinction, shape, and order apart from God the Maker. We do not value pottery more than the person who made it. We do not value objects made of glass or gold more than the worker who shaped them. If we see beauty and skill in these objects, we praise the craftsman. The craftsman receives the glory for the vessels. It is the same with matter and God. The praise and honor for the ordered beauty of the world rightly belong not to matter, but to God who shaped matter. Therefore, if we treated the different forms of matter as gods, we would show that we had no true understanding of God. We would be placing things that can break apart and perish on the same level as the one who is eternal. Chapter 16. The world is certainly beautiful. It is impressive because of its great size, the way all its parts are arranged, the movement of the heavenly bodies along their paths, the stars around the north, and its round shape. But we should not worship the world. We should worship the one who made it. When your subjects come to you, they do not ignore you, their rulers and lords, from whom they hope to receive what they need, and speak only to the beauty of your palace. If they happen to see the royal palace, they may briefly admire its beautiful design, but they give honor to you yourselves, because you are the ones who rule over all. You rulers build and decorate your palaces for yourselves. But God did not create the world because he needed it. God has everything in himself. He is unapproachable light. He is a perfect world. He is spirit, power, and reason. So if the world is like a well-tuned instrument moving in perfect rhythm, I worship the one who gave it harmony, plays its notes, and produces its beautiful song. I do not worship the instrument. At music contests, the judges do not ignore the musicians and crown the instruments. So if, as Plato says, the world was made by divine skill, then I admire its beauty and worship the one who made it. Or if, as Aristotle's followers say, the world is God's own being and body, we still worship God who causes the body to move. We do not turn away from him and lower ourselves to worship the weak elements. We do not worship matter that can suffer and change, even if they describe the air as something that cannot suffer. Or if someone thinks that the different parts of the world are powers of God, we still do not worship the powers themselves. We worship their Maker and Lord. I do not ask matter to give what it does not have. I do not pass by God and worship the elements, because they do nothing except exist what they were commanded to do. The elements are beautiful to look at because of the skill of their maker, but they still remain matter. Plato also supports this view. He says that heaven and earth have received many blessings from the Father, but because they have bodies, they cannot possibly be free from change. So I admire the heavens and the elements because of the skill shown in them, but I do not worship them as gods because I know they can break down and pass away. How then can I call statues gods when I know that human beings made them? Please listen to a few words about this. Chapter 17. A person defending a case must give exact arguments, so I must speak more clearly about these two things: the names of the gods and their images. First, I must show that the names of these gods are recent. Then I must show that their images are also recent, as if they were made only yesterday. You yourselves already know these things very well. You are trained in every kind of knowledge, and know the ancient writers better than anyone else. I say then that Orpheus, Homer, and Hesiod were the ones who gave family histories and names to those whom people call gods. Herodotus says the same thing. He says, in my opinion, Hesiod and Homer lived only 400 years before me, and no earlier. They were the ones who wrote the family history of the gods for the Greeks. They gave the gods their names, assigned them their honors and duties, and described their forms. Images of the gods were not used at all while statue making, painting, and sculpture were still unknown. They did not become common until the time of Sorius of Samos, Crato of Sicyon, Cleanthes of Corinth, and a young woman from Corinth. Sorius invented outline drawing when he traced the shadow of a horse in the sunlight. Crato invented painting when he painted the outlines of a man and a woman with oil on a whitened board. The young woman from Corinth invented the art of making raised clay figures. She was in love with a man. While he was sleeping, she traced the outline of his shadow on a wall. Her father was a potter. He was pleased by how closely the outline resembled the man, so he carved the shape and filled it with clay. This figure is still preserved at Corinth. After these people, Daedalus and Theodorus of Miletus made further advances in sculpture and statue making. So you can see that images and statues began to be made so recently that we can name the artist who made the image of each particular god. For example, Endoius, a student of Daedalus, made the image of Artemis at Ephesus. He also made the image of Athena, or rather, Athela, as she is called by those who speak in the style of the mysteries. She was given the name of the ancient image made from the olive tree. Endoius also made the seated statue of the same goddess. The image of the Python god was made by Theodorus and Telecles. The Delian god and Artemis were made by Teticles and Angelio. The images of Hera and Samos and Argos were made by Smilus. The other statues were made by Phidias. The statue of Aphrodite the courtesan in Cnidius was made by Praxiteles. The statue of Asclepius and Ephiderus was made by Phidias. In short, every one of these statues was made by a human being. If these statues are gods, why did they not exist from the beginning? Why are they younger than the people who made them? Why did they need human beings and human skill in order to exist? They are nothing more than earth, stones, physical material, and skillful human work. Chapter 18. Some people say, these objects are only images, but real gods exist, and the images are made in their honor. They say that the prayer and sacrifices offered to the images are really directed to the gods themselves. They also say that there is no other way to approach the gods, because it is hard for a human being to meet a god face to face. To prove this, they point to the powers that certain images seem to have. So let us examine the power connected with the names of these gods. Greatest of emperors, before I begin this discussion, I ask you to be patient with me while I present the truth. My purpose is not simply to show that gods are false. My purpose is to answer the slanders against us and explain the reason for the way we live. By considering yourselves, may you also be able to discover the heavenly kingdom. All things are subject to you, Father and Son, because you received your kingdom from above. As the prophetic spirit says, for the king's soul is in the hand of God. In the same way, All things are subject to the one God and to the Logos who comes from him, the Son. We understand the Son to be inseparable from the Father. This is the main point I ask you to consider carefully. According to those who worship these gods, the gods did not exist from the beginning. Each one came into existence just as we did. They all agree about this. Homer speaks of old Oceanus, father of the gods, and Tithes. Orpheus was the first to invent the names of these gods, describe their births, and tell the stories of what each one did. Those who worship them believe that Orpheus speaks about divine things more truthfully than others. Homer himself follows Orpheus in many things, especially when speaking about the gods. Orpheus also says that their first origin was from water. Oceanus, the beginning of all things. According to Orpheus, water was the beginning of everything. Mud was formed from water. From water and mud came a living creature, a dragon with the head of a lion growing on it. Between the two heads was the face of a god named Heracles and Kronos. This Heracles produced an enormous egg. When the egg became full, the strong pressure and rubbing of the one who produced it split into two parts. The upper part took the form of heaven, and the lower part took the form of earth. The goddess Ge also came forth with a body. Ouranos joined himself to Ge and became the father of females, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropis. He also became the father of males, Cotys, Gyges, and Briareus, who had 100 hands, and the Cyclopes, Brontis, Steropes, and Argos. He bound them and threw them down into Tartarus because he had learned that his children would remove him from power. Because of this, Ge became angry and gave birth to the Titans. Godlike Gaia gave birth to sons for Uranus. They are known by the name Titans because they took revenge on Uranus, majestic and shining with his crown of stars. Chapter 19. According to these stories, this was the beginning both of their gods and of the universe. What should we make of this? Anything that is truly divine must be understood as existing from the beginning. If these gods came into existence after not existing before, as the writers about the gods say, then they are not true gods. A thing is either uncreated and eternal, or it is created and able to perish. I am not saying something different from the philosophers. Plato asks, what is the thing that always exists and has no beginning? And what is the thing that has come into existence but never truly is? When Plato speaks about things known by the mind and things known by the senses, he teaches this. What always exists and is known by the mind had no beginning. But what does not always exist and is known by the senses had a beginning. It begins to exist and later stops existing. In the same way, the Stoics say that everything will be burned up and then exist again, with the world receiving another beginning. According to them, there are two causes. One cause is active and ruling, this is providence. The other cause is passive and changeable, this is matter. Yet, even though they say the world is cared for by providence, they still say the world cannot remain forever in the same condition because it was created. If that is true, then how can these gods remain forever? They do not exist by themselves, they were brought into existence. And how are these gods greater than matter if they were formed from water? But according to their own teaching, not even water is the beginning of all things. What could be formed from elements that are simple and all the same? Matter also needs a craftsman, and a craftsman needs matter. How could shapes be made without matter or without a craftsman? It is also unreasonable to say that matter is older than God. The cause that makes something must exist before the things that are made. Chapter 20. Suppose the foolishness of their religion went no further than saying that the gods were created and formed from water. I have already shown that everything made can also be destroyed. If that were all, I could now move on to the other accusations. But they also describe the bodies of the gods. For example, they speak of Hercules as a god shaped like a coiled dragon. They describe others as having 100 hands. They describe the daughter whom Zeus fathered with his mother Rhea or Demeter as having 2 eyes in the normal places. 2 more eyes in her forehead, the face of an animal on the back of her neck, and horns. Rhea was so frightened by this monstrous child that she ran away and refused to nurse her. For this reason, she is secretly called Athela, because of the word for breast, though she is commonly called Persephone and Kore. She is not the same as Athena, who is called Kore because that word can refer to the pupil of the eye. They also describe what they considered the wonderful actions of these gods. They tell how Cronos mutilated his father and threw him down from his chariot. They tell how Cronos murdered his children and swallowed his sons. They tell how Zeus bound his father and threw him down into Tartarus, just as Uranus had done to his sons. They tell how Zeus fought with the Titans for control of the universe. They tell how Zeus chased his mother Rhea when she refused to marry him. Rhea changed herself into a female dragon, and Zeus changed himself into a dragon. He tied her with what is called the Herculean knot and carried out his desire. The staff of Hermes is a symbol of this act. They also tell how Zeus violated his daughter Persephone, again taking the form of a dragon, and became the father of Dionysus. In the face of stories like these, I must at least ask this: what is proper or useful in such stories? Why should they make us believe that Kronos, Zeus, Kore, and the others are gods? Is it the description of their bodies? What sensible and thoughtful person would believe that a viper was born from a god? Orpheus says, "From the sacred womb, Phanes produced another child, horrible and fierce. It looked like a terrifying viper. It had hair on its head, and its face was beautiful, but from the neck down, it had the dreadful body of a fearsome dragon." Who could accept that Phanes himself, who was called the firstborn god because he came from the egg, had the body or shape of a dragon? Who could accept that Zeus swallowed him so that Zeus might become too large to be contained? If these beings are no different from the lowest animals, then they are not gods. It is obvious that God must be different from earthly things and from things made out of matter. How then can we approach them with prayers when their origin is like the origin of cattle, when they themselves have the forms of animals, and when they are ugly to look at? Chapter 21. Someone may say, the gods only had bodily forms. They had blood, seed, anger, and sexual desire. But even that is foolish and ridiculous. True gods do not have anger. They do not have uncontrolled desire. They do not have bodily appetite or seed for producing children. Even if someone says they have bodies, they should at least be above anger and rage. Athena should not be described as burning with rage and inwardly angry with Zeus. And Hera should not be described like this. Hera's heart could not hold back her anger. They should also be above grief. My eyes see a sorrowful sight, a man fleeing around the walls. My heart grieves for Hector. I would call even human beings rude and foolish if they let anger and grief control them. So what should we say when the father of men and gods mourns for his son? Alas, alas, fate has decreed that my beloved Sarpedon must fall by the hands of Patroclus. And yet while mourning for him, he cannot save him from danger. He was the son of Zeus, yet Zeus did not save him. Who would not condemn the foolishness of people who love gods like these? Or rather, who would not say that such people live as though there were no true God at all? Let the gods have bodies, if you wish. But Aphrodite should not be wounded in her body by Diomedes. The proud son of Tydeus, Diomedes, has wounded me. Nor should she be wounded in her soul by Ares. She rejects me, poor awkward me, and gives herself to that handsome adulterer, the strong god of war. And again, the weapon pierced the flesh. Ares was supposed to be terrifying in battle. He was supposed to be the ally of Zeus against the Titans, yet he is shown to be weaker than Diomedes. He raged like Mars when he brandished his spear. Be quiet, Homer. A god does not rage. But you describe this god as covered with blood and as the destroyer of human beings. Mars, Mars, destroyer of mortals, stained with blood. You also tell the story of his adultery and how he was caught in chains. Gladly he led away the woman he desired, and lay with her on the bed. Then the trap fell around them. Do they not pour out many irreverent stories like these about the gods? Uranus is mutilated, Cronos is bound and thrown into Tartarus, the Titans rebel, Styx dies in battle. They even describe the gods as mortal. They say the gods fall in love with one another. They also say the gods fall in love with human beings. Among the peaks of Ida, immortal Venus bore Aeneas to Anchises. So do these gods not fall in love? Do they not suffer? Someone may answer, they are gods and desire cannot touch them. But even if a god took on flesh for some divine purpose, that would mean he had to become a slave to desire. Never before has such a flood of love filled my soul, not for a goddess and not for a mortal woman, not for the beautiful wife of Ixion, who bore Perithous wise as the gods, not for Danae with the lovely feet, the daughter of Acrisius, who bore Perseus admired by all, not for the daughter of noble Phoenix, not for Semele, not for the beautiful Alcmena, not for Demeter, queen with golden hair, not for bright Leto, and not even for you. A being like this was created, he can perish, there is no sign of true divinity in him. They even make their gods hired servants of human beings. In the house of Admetus, though I was a god, I endured serving at a servant's table. They also make them keep cattle. When I came to this land, I tended cattle for the man who hosted me, and I guarded his house. So Admetus was greater than the god who served him. And Apollo, you are called a prophet and a wise one. You are supposed to know beforehand what will happen to others. Yet you did not foresee the death of the one you loved. You even killed him with your own hand, though he was dear to you. I believe that Apollo's divine mouth was full of truth and full of prophetic skill. Aeschylus rebukes Apollo for being a false prophet, the very one who sings at the feast, the one who spoke these things. Alas, he is the one who killed my son. Chapter 22. But perhaps, someone will say, these stories are only poetic imagination. They are really symbols for things in nature. Empedocles gives this kind of explanation. Let Zeus be fire, and Hera the source of life, with Pluto and Nestis, who washes human springs with tears. Suppose then that Zeus means fire, Hera means earth, Aidoneus means air, and Nestis means water. If that is true, then these so-called gods are only elements of the world: fire, water, earth, and air. None of them is God. Zeus is not God, Hera is not God, Aidoneus is not God. Their existence and origin came from matter, which God divided into parts: fire, water, earth, and the gentle height of the air, together with harmony among them. These elements cannot remain together without harmony. Conflict would destroy them, so how can anyone call them gods? According to Empedocles, friendship has the power to rule. Things made of different parts are ruled by something else, and whatever has the power to rule has authority over what it rules. So if we make the ruler and the things being ruled equal in power, we are putting matter on the same level as God without realizing it. But matter can perish, it can shift and change. God is uncreated, eternal, and always in perfect agreement with himself. The Stoics also give symbolic explanations. They say Zeus is the hot part of nature. They say Hera is the air, and that her name points to this when the word is connected with itself. They say Poseidon means what is drunk, that is water. But different people explain these gods in different ways. Some say Zeus is air that has both male and female qualities. Others say Zeus is the season that brings mild weather, and that is why he alone escaped from Cronos. To the Stoics we may say this: if you acknowledge one God, the highest uncreated and eternal one, and if you also say that there are many physical bodies because matter changes in many ways, and if you say that the Spirit of God fills matter and receives different names according to matter's changes, then the forms of matter become the body of God. But when the elements are destroyed in the great fire, those names must also perish along with the forms. Only the Spirit of God will remain. So who can believe that these bodies are God's when their forms depend on changing matter and are connected with decay? Others say that Chronos means time and Rhea means the earth. They say that Rhea becomes pregnant by Chronos and gives birth. For this reason, they call her the mother of all. They say Chronos fathers his children and then devours them. They explain this mutilation as the union of male and female. The seed is cut off and placed in the womb. Then a human being is formed, and that human being has sexual desire within himself. This desire is called Aphrodite. They say the madness of Chronos means the churning of the seasons, which destroys both living and non-living things. They say his chains and Tartarus mean time, because time changes through the seasons and then disappears. To these people we answer, if Chronos is time, then he changes. If he is a season, then he churns and passes away. If he is darkness, frost, or the wet part of nature, then he does not remain the same. But God is immortal, unmoving, and unchanging. Therefore Chronos is not God, and neither is his image. Now consider Zeus. If Zeus is airborne from Chronos, and if the male part of that air is called Zeus while the female part is called Hera, then Zeus can change. This is also why they call Zeus and Hera both brother and sister, and husband and wife. If Zeus is a season, then he turns and passes, but God does not change. He does not shift from one state to another. Why should I continue and test your patience? You already know very well how each writer explains these myths as symbols of nature. You know the different opinions writers have held about nature. You know what they say about Athena, whom they call the wisdom that fills all things. You know what they say about Isis, whom they call the birth of all time. They say all things come from her, and that all things exist through her. You also know what they say about Osiris. They say his brother Typhon murdered him. Then Isis, together with her son Horus, searched for the parts of his body. When they found them, they honored them with a tomb. That tomb is still called the tomb of Osiris. But while the people wander among the forms of matter, they fail to find God, who can be seen only by the mind. Instead, they turn the elements and their separate parts into gods. They give these different things different names at different times. For example, they call the sowing of the grain Osiris. This is why in the mysteries, when they find the parts of his body, or rather the fruits of the earth, they say to Isis, "We have found them, we rejoice with you." They call the fruit of the vine Dionysus. They call the vine itself Semele. They call the heat of the sun the thunderbolt. But those who explain the myths as stories about real gods do not make the gods look more divine. They do the opposite. They do not realize that their own defense confirms the shameful things said about the gods. What do Europa and the bull have to do with earth and air? What do the swan and Leda have to do with earth and air? Why should the shameful intercourse of Zeus with them be explained as the union of earth and air? They have failed to discover the greatness of God. Their minds cannot rise upward because they have no connection with the heavenly place. So they remain trapped among the forms of matter. They are rooted to the earth, and they turn the changes of the elements into gods. They are like someone who gives the place of the ship's captain to the ship itself. A ship may be fully equipped with everything it needs, but it is useless without a captain. In the same way, the elements may be arranged in perfect order, but they are useless without God's care. A ship will not sail by itself, and the elements will not move without their maker. Chapter 23. But since you are wiser than all other men, you may ask, if the beings for whom statues are made are not gods, then why do some idols seem to have power? Lifeless and motionless images probably cannot do anything by themselves unless something moves them. We do not deny that certain things happen in different places, cities, and nations in the names of idols. But even if some people have been helped and others have been harmed, that does not mean the beings behind these effects are gods. I have carefully investigated two questions. First, why do people think idols have this power? Second, who is really producing these effects while using the names of the idols? To show who is doing these things and to show that they are not gods, I must bring in some philosophers as witnesses. First, Thales, according to those who have carefully studied his views, divides higher beings into gods, demons, and heroes. He understands God to be the mind of the world. By demons, he means beings that have souls. By heroes, he means the souls of human beings after death. Good heroes are good souls, and bad heroes are worthless souls. Plato also divides higher beings into different groups. He speaks of the uncreated God. He also speaks of the beings made by the uncreated God to beautify heaven, the planets, and the fixed stars. He also speaks of demons. Plato does not think it is proper to speak about these demons himself. Instead, he says we should listen to those who have already spoken about them. To speak about the other demons and to know where they come from is beyond our power, but we should believe those who spoke before us, the descendants of the gods, as they say. Surely they must know their own ancestors well, so it is impossible to disbelieve the sons of God, even if they speak without likely or convincing proofs, since they claim to be telling their own family history. Custom requires us to believe them. So let us follow their own account and speak about the origin of the gods as they do. From Ge and Uranus come Oceanus and Tethys. From Oceanus and Tethys come Phorcus, Kronos, Rhea, and the rest. From Kronos and Rhea came Zeus, Hera, and all the others who are called their brothers and sisters. From these came still more descendants. But Plato had thought deeply about the eternal mind and the God who is known by reason. He spoke about God's true existence, the simplicity of his nature, and the good that flows from him, which is truth. He spoke about the first power. He said that all things are around the King of all, that all things exist for his sake, and that he is the cause of all things. He also spoke about the second and the third, saying that the second moves around second things, and that the third around third things. So did the same Plato really think it was beyond his ability to learn the truth about beings who were supposedly born from visible things, namely earth and heaven? That is impossible to believe. Plato knew that it is impossible to believe that gods give birth and are themselves born. Everything that begins to exist must eventually come to an end. He also knew that it would be much harder to change the opinion of the crowd because the crowd accepts these myths without examining them. For this reason, he said that it was beyond his power to know and speak about the origin of the other demons. He could not accept or teach that gods were born. Plato also says, the great ruler in heaven, Zeus, drives his winged chariot in front. He orders and governs all things, and a host of gods and demons follows him. This does not refer to Zeus, who was said to have come from Kronos. Here, Plato uses the name Zeus for the maker of the universe. Plato makes himself clear since he could not find another suitable title for God. He used the common name that people knew. He did not use it as God's proper name. He used it for clarity because it is not possible to speak fully about God to everyone. He also adds the word great. By doing this, he separates the heavenly God from the earthly Zeus. He separates the uncreated God from the created Zeus. The created Zeus is younger than heaven and earth. He is even younger than the Cretans who hid him so that his father would not kill him. Chapter 24. I am speaking to you who have studied every branch of knowledge, so there is no need for me to mention more poets or examine more opinions. What I have already said is enough. If the poets and philosophers had not acknowledged one God, and if they had not said that the other gods were demons, matter, or human beings who once lived, then there might seem to be some reason for persecuting us. But they have said these things, and we speak in a way that clearly separates God from matter and explains the differences between their natures. We acknowledge God, we also acknowledge His Son, who is His Logos, and the Holy Spirit. They are united in essence, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Son is the mind, reason, and wisdom of the Father. The Spirit flows from God, as light comes from fire. We also understand that other powers exist. These powers rule around matter and work through matter. One of these powers is especially hostile to God. This does not mean that anything can truly oppose God. It is not like strife opposing friendship, as Empedocles says. It is not like night opposing day through the appearing and disappearing of the stars. If anything truly set itself against God, it would cease to exist. The power and might of God would destroy its whole structure. Rather, this hostile spirit opposes the goodness that is in God. This goodness belongs to God by necessity and exists together with Him. It is like color existing with a body, since color cannot exist by itself apart from a body. This does not mean that goodness is merely one part of God. It is a quality that exists with Him and is united with Him, just as fire is naturally yellow and the ether is dark blue. The spirit connected with matter opposes this goodness in God. God created the Spirit just as He created the other angels. God entrusted Him with the control of matter and the forms of matter. This is the work of angels. They care on God's behalf for the things God created and arranged. God Himself has universal and general care over the whole creation. The angels appointed over particular parts care for those particular parts. Human beings have freedom to choose either virtue or vice. You would not honor good people or punish bad people unless virtue and vice were within their own power. Some people faithfully carry out the duties you entrust to them, others are unfaithful. The same is true among the angels. Some angels were created by God as free beings. They remained faithful to the work for which God made and appointed them. The others sinned against both the nature God had given them and the authority entrusted to them. This includes the ruler of matter and its different forms. It also includes some of those placed around the first heaven. You know that we do not say anything about witnesses. We speak the things that were declared by the prophets. These angels fell into impure desire for young women and were overcome by the flesh. The ruler of matter also became careless and wicked in managing the things entrusted to him. From these angels who desired young women came those who are called giants. And if the poets have also said something about the giants, do not be surprised. Earthly wisdom and divine wisdom differ from each other as much as seeming truth differs from real truth. One comes from heaven, the other comes from earth. Indeed, according to the ruler of matter, we know that we often speak lies that look like truths. Chapter 25. These angels fell from heaven. They now move through the air and over the earth, and they can no longer rise to heavenly things. The souls of the giants are the demons that wander around the world. The demons act according to the nature they received. The fallen angels act according to the desires they chose to follow. The ruler of matter, as we can see simply from what happens in the world, manages things in a way that opposes the goodness in God. Often this anxious thought has crossed my mind. Is it chance or is it some divine power that rules the small affairs of human beings? Against both hope and justice, some people are driven into exile and stripped of everything they need to live, while others continue to enjoy prosperity. Because prosperity and suffering seem to come against both hope and justice, Euripides could not tell who governs earthly affairs. The condition of the world seemed to him like something that can make a person say, "When we see these things, how can we say there is a race of gods or submit ourselves to laws?" The same problem led Aristotle to say that the things below heaven are not under the care of providence, but God's eternal care reaches us here below just as much as it reaches everything else. Whether the earth is willing or not, it must produce plants, and so provide food for my flocks. God deals with each deserving person according to truth, not according to human opinion. All other things are cared for according to the general structure of nature, which is ruled by reason. But the movements and actions of demons come from the hostile spirit. These movements produce disorderly outbreaks. The demons also move people in different ways. They affect individuals and nations. They act on people separately and together. They work from within and from outside. They move people partly according to the pull of matter and partly according to each person's connection with divine things. Because of this, some respected thinkers have believed that the universe has no clear order and is driven here and there by unreasonable chance. But they do not understand the truth. Nothing in the structure of the whole world is out of order or neglected. Each thing was made according to reason. Therefore, each thing keeps the order appointed for it. Human beings are also well ordered, as far as God the Maker is concerned. All human beings share the same original nature. The human body follows the law placed upon it. The end of human life is also equal and common to all, but each person is still pushed and moved in one direction or another. This happens according to each person's own character and according to the action of the ruling spirit and the demons who follow him. This happens even though all people share the same original structure of mind. Chapter 26. The beings who draw people towards idols are the demons I already mentioned. They desire the blood of sacrifices and feed on it. But the gods whom the crowd worships and whose names are given to the images were once human beings. Their own histories show this. The things done and the names of these gods also prove that demons are the ones acting under those names. Some people mutilate themselves in honor of Rhea. Others wound and kill, as in the worship of Artemis. The goddess worshipped in Taurus puts every stranger to death. I will not speak about those who cut themselves with knives or beat themselves with whips made of bones. I will not try to describe every kind of demon. A true God would not lead people to do things that go against nature. When a demon plots against a person, he first harms that person's mind. But God is perfectly God, and he was always doing good. There is also strong proof that the beings who show power through the statues are not the same as the people for whom the statues were made. We can see this in Troas Imperium. Troas has statues in Nerolinus, a man from our own time. Perium has statues of Alexander and Proteus. The tomb and statue of Alexander are still in the public square. The other statues of Nerolinus are only public decorations, if a city can really be decorated by such things. But one of his statues is believed to give prophecies and heal the sick. Because of this, the people of Troas offer sacrifices to the statue, cover it with gold, and hang wreaths on it. The statues of Alexander and Proteus are similar. As you know, Proteus threw himself into the fire near Olympia. The statue of Proteus is also said to give prophecies, and sacrifices on public festivals are offered to the statue of Alexander, as though he were a god who could hear. Wretched Paris, though you are so handsome, you slave of a woman. So is it really Nerolinus, Proteus, and Alexander who work through these statues, or does the material of the statues have power by itself? But the material is only bronze. What can bronze do by itself? It can be melted down and made into another shape, just as Amasis did with the foot bath in the story told by Herodotus. And what good can Nerolinus, Proteus, or Alexander do for the sick? The statue is now said to do something that Nerolinus himself could not do when he was alive and sick. Chapter 27. What then is really happening? First, the soul can be moved by unreasonable and imaginary thoughts. These thoughts produce different false images in the mind. Some of these images come from matter, others are shaped and produced by the soul itself. This especially happens when the soul shares in the spirit connected with matter and becomes mixed with it. Such a soul does not look upward to heavenly things and to their Maker. Instead, it looks downward to earthly things. it becomes completely focused on the earth. At that point, it is no longer living as a pure spirit, it is acting as though it were only flesh and blood. These unreasonable and imaginary movements of the soul produce empty visions in that mind. Through these visions, the soul becomes wildly attached to idols. A weak and easily influenced soul may have no knowledge or experience of sound teaching. It may not be used to looking at the truth or thinking carefully about the Father and Maker of all things. When such a soul accepts false ideas about itself, the demons take advantage of it. These demons hover around matter. They desire the smell of sacrifices and the blood of victims. They are always ready to lead people into error. They use the confused thoughts of the crowd. They take hold of people's minds and pour empty visions into them, making those visions as if they came from idols and statues. Sometimes, because the soul is immortal, it can move according to reason by itself. It may predict something that will happen, or it may heal something that is happening now. When this occurs, the demons claim the glory for themselves. Chapter 28. It is probably necessary, based on what I have already said, to say a little about the names of these gods. Herodotus and Alexander, the son of Philip, both say that these gods were once human beings. Alexander says this in a letter to his mother. Both Herodotus and Alexander are also said to have spoken with the priests at Heliopolis, Memphis, and Thebes. They say that they learned from these priests that the gods had once been men. Herodotus says this: they said that the beings represented by these images were very far from being gods, but in the times before them, Egypt was ruled by gods who lived on earth with human beings. One of them was always supreme over the others. The last of these was Horus, the son of Osiris, whom the Greeks call Apollo. He overthrew Typhon and ruled over Egypt as its last god king. Osiris is called Dionysus or Bacchus by the Greeks. Herodotus also says, almost all the names of the gods came into Greece from Egypt. He also says that Apollo was the son of Dionysus and Isis. According to the Egyptians, Apollo and Diana are the children of Bacchus and Isis, and Latona was their nurse and protector. These beings, whom the Egyptians believed came from heaven, were their first kings, partly because the Egyptians did not know the true worship of God, and partly because they were grateful for their rule. They honored these kings and their wives as gods. The Egyptians used clean male cattle and male calves for sacrifice everywhere, but they are not allowed to sacrifice the females because female cattle are sacred to Isis. The statue of Isis has the form of a woman, but with horns like a cow, resembling the Greek images of Io. And who should be trusted more about these matters than the Egyptian priests? The priesthood was passed down in their families from father to son. Along with the priesthood, they also received the history. It is not likely that priests, whose work was to make people honor the idols, would falsely say that those idols represented human beings. If Herodotus alone had said that the Egyptians spoke of their gods as human beings in their histories, we might have had reason not to believe him. He was known for telling strange stories. He says, I do not intend to repeat what they told me about their religion, except only the names of their gods, which are matters of very little importance. But Alexander says the same thing. Hermes, called Trismegistus, who is believed by them to share in eternity, says the same thing. Many others say the same thing too, far too many to name one by one. So there is no room left for doubt. These beings were kings, and later people treated them as gods. The most educated Egyptians also testify that they were human beings. They say that the sky, the earth, the sun, and the moon are gods, but they consider the others to be mortal human beings, and they say that the temples are their tombs. Apollodorus says the same thing in his book about the gods. Herodotus even calls their sufferings mysteries. He had already spoken about the ceremonies at the festival of Isis in the city of Busiris. There, at the end of the sacrifice, a huge crowd of men and women, many thousands in number, beat themselves in mourning for a god whose name Herodotus says he must not mention. If these beings are gods, then they are immortal. But if people beat themselves for them, and if their sufferings are remembered in mysteries, then they were human beings. Herodotus himself says, "Here also, in the same sacred arena of Athena Assayas, is the burial place of someone whom I do not think it right to name in this connection. It stands behind the temple against the back wall and covers the whole wall. There are also large stone obelisks in the enclosure, and near them is a lake with a stone border. It is circular in shape, and in size it seemed to me about equal to the lake at Delos called the Hoop. On this lake, at night, the Egyptians act out the sufferings of the one whose name I will not mention. They call this performance their mysteries. Not only do they show the tomb of Osiris, but they also show the way his body was embalmed. Herodotus says, when a body is brought to them, they show the person who brought it different wooden models of corpses painted to look like real bodies. The most perfect model is said to be made after the pattern of the one whom I do not think it religious to name in connection with such a matter." Chapter 29. Among the Greeks also, famous poets and historians say the same thing. One poet says this about Heracles: "That lawless man, that man of brute strength, ignored the voice of heaven and violated the sacred customs of society. Since this was his character, it was fitting that he went mad. It was also fitting that he lit his own funeral fire and burned himself to death." Hesiod says this about Asclepius: "The mighty father of gods and men was filled with anger. From the top of Olympus he threw a blazing thunderbolt and killed the beloved son of Latona. That was how great his anger was." And Pindar says, "Even wisdom can be trapped by money. A shining bribe of gold in the hand corrupted even him. Therefore the son of Cronos quickly stopped his breath with both hands and sealed his doom with a bolt of fire." So there are only two possibilities. Either these beings were gods and therefore did not long for gold. O gold, the finest prize for mortal men, more delightful than mother or beloved children. For God needs nothing and is above bodily desire. If they were gods, they also would not have died. Or they were born as human beings. If so, they were wicked because of ignorance and were overcome by love of money. What more do I need to say? Why should I speak about Castor, Pollux, or Amphiaraus? They were born from human parents only a short time ago, so to speak, and yet people consider them gods. They even imagine that Ino, after her madness and the sufferings that followed it, became a goddess. Sailors will call her Leucothea, and they say this about her son: sailors will call upon great Palamon. Chapter 30. Some people had terrible lives and were hated by God, yet they still came to be regarded as gods. Semiramis, the daughter of Derceto, was sexually immortal and stained with blood, yet she was honored as a Syrian goddess. Because of Derceto, the Syrians worshipped doves and Semiramis. They tell the impossible story that a woman was changed into a dove. This story is found in Theseus. So why should it surprise us if some people were called gods by their own nations because they had ruled over them and held power? The Sibyl, whom Plato also mentions, says, "This was the 10th generation of human beings with speech, after the flood had burst upon the people of earlier times. Cronos, Japetus, and Titan ruled then. People called them the noble sons of Uranus and Gaia, because they were the first among human beings gifted with speech. Others were called gods because of their strength, such as Heracles and Perseus. Others were called gods because of their skill, such as Asclepius. So some received the name God because their subjects honored them. Others received it because rulers took it for themselves. Some were worshipped out of fear. Others were worshipped because people wanted favor or revenge. In this way, Antinous came to be regarded as a god because your ancestors showed kindness toward their subjects. But later generations accepted his worship without examining it. The Cretans always lie, for they, O king, built a tomb for you, though you are not dead. Callimachus, you believe that Zeus was born, but you do not believe that he was buried. You think you are hiding the truth, but you are actually proclaiming that Zeus died, even to people who did not know it. When you see the cave, you remember that Rhea gave birth there, but when you see the coffin, you try to cover over his death. You fail to understand that God, who is never born, is eternal. So again, there are only two possibilities. Either the stories told by the crowd and the poets about the gods are not worthy of belief. If that is true, then the worship given to these gods is useless, because the beings and the false stories do not exist. Or the stories are true. Their births, sexual affairs, murders, thefts, mutilations, and deaths by thunderbolts really happened. If that is true, then these gods no longer exist. They began to exist after not existing before, and therefore they have also passed away. Why should we believe some parts of the poet's stories, but reject other parts? The poets wrote these stories to make people honor the gods more greatly. Surely the very people who made them be considered gods and who tried to present their deeds as worthy of worship would not have invented their sufferings. Therefore I have shown, as well as I am able, though not as fully as the importance of the subject deserves, that we are not atheists. We acknowledge God, the maker of this universe, and his logos. Chapter 31. They have also invented other stories against us. They accuse us of sinful feasts and forbidden sexual relationships. They do this for two reasons. First, they want to believe they have a reasonable excuse for hating us. Second, they hope to frighten us away from our way of life, or else make rulers harsh and merciless toward us because the accusations sound so terrible. But their efforts fail against people who know the truth. Evil has always fought against goodness. This did not begin in our time. Pythagoras was burned to death with 300 others. Heraclitus and Democritus were driven out of their cities. Heraclitus was driven out of Ephesus. Democritus was driven out of Abdera because people accused him of being insane. The Athenians also condemned Socrates to death. But the opinion of the crowd did not make those men any less virtuous. In the same way, the careless slander of some people does not make our lives any less righteous. Before God, we have a good reputation. Even so, I will answer these accusations too. I am confident that what I have already said has cleared us in your judgment. You are wiser than all other men, so you understand this. People whose lives are directed toward God will not even allow themselves to think about the smallest sin. Each one of us wants to stand before Him blameless and without fault. If we believed that this present life was the only life, then people might suspect us of sinning. They might think we were slaves to flesh and blood, overcome by greed or ruled by bodily desire. But we know that God sees everything we think and everything we say, both by night and by day. God Himself is light, and He sees everything in our hearts. We are convinced that when we leave this present life, we will live another life. That life will either be better than this one, it will be heavenly, not earthly. We will remain near God and with God. Our souls will be free from change and suffering. We will not live as mere flesh, even though we will have bodies, but as heavenly spirits. Or, if we fail with the rest, we will enter a worse life, a life in fire. God did not make us like sheep or beasts of burden. He did not make us as some unimportant side project only for us to perish and disappear completely. For these reasons, it is not likely that we would choose to do evil and hand ourselves over to the great judge for punishment. Chapter 32. It is not surprising that they invent stories about us like the stories they tell about their own gods. They even turn the shameful events and the lies of their gods into religious mysteries. But if they truly wanted to condemn shameless and uncontrollable sexual behavior, then they should hate Zeus or Orpheus. They should hate Zeus because he fathered children with his mother Rhea and with his daughter Kore, and because he married his own sister. Or they should hate Orpheus, who invented these stories and made Zeus more unholy and hateful than Thyestes himself. Thyestes sinned with his daughter because an oracle told him to do it. He wanted to gain the kingdom and take revenge. But we are so far from practicing uncontrolled sexual behavior that we are not even permitted to look at someone with lust. For he says, "He that looks on a woman to lust after her has committed adultery already in his heart." God made our eyes to be a light for us. We are not allowed to use them for sinful desire. But for us, a lustful look is adultery, because the eyes were made for another purpose. We will even have to answer for our thoughts. So how can anyone doubt that people who live this way practice self-control? We do not answer only to human laws, which a wicked person can escape. At the beginning, sovereign rulers, I showed you that our teaching comes from God. We have a law that measures righteousness by this rule. We must treat our neighbor as ourselves. Because of this, we regard people according to their age. Some we treat as sons and daughters, others we treat as brothers and sisters. Those who are older we honor as fathers and mothers. Since we call people brothers, sisters, and by other family names, we take the greatest care to keep their bodies pure and undefiled. The Logos also says to us, "If anyone kisses a second time because it gives him pleasure, he sins." And he adds, "Therefore the kiss, or rather the greeting, must be given with the greatest care. If even the smallest impurity of thought is mixed with it, it shuts us out from eternal life." Chapter 33. Because we hope for eternal life, we look down on the things of this life, even the pleasures of the body. Each of us considers only the woman he lawfully married to be his wife, and marriage is for the purpose of having children. A farmer throws seed into the ground and waits for the harvest. He does not keep sowing over and over in the same place. In the same way, for us, having children is the limit placed on bodily desire. You would also find many among us, both men and women, who grow old unmarried because they hope to live in closer fellowship with God. Remaining a virgin or living without sexual relations brings a person nearer to God, but indulging bodily thoughts and desires leads a person away from Him. So if we avoid sinful thoughts, we reject sinful actions even more strongly. We do not give our attention mainly to clever words. We give our attention to showing and teaching by our actions. A person should either remain as he was born, unmarried, or be satisfied with one marriage. A second marriage is only adultery covered with a respectable appearance. For whosoever puts away his wife, says he, and marries another, commits adultery. He does not allow a man to send away the woman whose virginity he has taken, nor does he allow him to marry again. The man who separates himself from his first wife, even if she has died, is an adulterer in disguise. He resists the hand of God, because in the beginning God made one man and one woman. He also breaks apart the closest union of flesh with flesh, which was formed so human race could continue. Chapter 34. This is how we live, so why should I even speak about things that are shameful to mention? The accusations made against us are an example of this proverb. The prostitute rebukes the pure woman. Our accusers have created a public market for sexual sin. They have set up shameful places for young people where every kind of filthy pleasure is available. They do not even avoid sexual acts between males. Males commit shameful acts with males. They dishonor the noblest and most beautiful bodies in every kind of way. In doing this, they dishonor the beautiful work of God. Beauty on earth did not make itself. It was sent here by the hand and will of God. Yet these very people accuse us of the things they know they themselves are doing. They also attribute these acts to their own gods. They even boast about them as noble deeds worthy of gods. These adulterers and these men who sexually abuse boys slander those who remain unmarried and those who marry only once. Meanwhile, they themselves live like fish. Fish swallow whatever comes their way, and the stronger fish chases the weaker. In truth, this is a kind of feeding on human flesh. It is violence against the very laws that you and your ancestors carefully established to protect what is good and right. The problem is so widespread that even the governors you send to the provinces are not enough to hear all the complaints against these people. But we are not even allowed to refuse more blows when we are struck, and when we are slandered, we are not allowed to slander in return. We must bless. And for us, it is not enough simply to be just. Justice means giving back the same treatment we receive, but we must be good and patiently endure evil. Chapter 35. What reasonable person, knowing that we live this way, would say that we are murderers? We could not eat human flesh unless we first killed someone, so the first accusation is false. And if someone asked our accusers about the second accusation, whether they have actually seen what they claim, not one of them would be shameless enough to say he had seen it. Besides, we have servants. Some of us have more, and some have fewer. We could not possibly hide such things from them. Yet not one servant has ever been found who would invent accusations like this against us. People know that we cannot even bear to watch a person being put to death, even if the execution is lawful. So who can accuse us of murder or cannibalism? Most people consider gladiator fights and shows with wild beasts to be among the most exciting entertainments, especially the ones provided by you. But we believe that watching a man be killed is almost the same as killing him ourselves. For this reason, we have rejected such shows completely. If we do not even watch a killing because we fear sharing in its guilt and pollution, how could we kill people ourselves? We also say that women who use drugs to cause an abortion commit murder. They will have to give an account to God for the abortion. So how could we commit murder? The same person cannot believe that the child in the womb is already a created being and therefore cared for by God, and then kill that child after it has been born. The same person cannot refuse to abandon an infant because abandoning infants is child murder and then later destroy the child after raising it. We are always consistent in all things. We submit ourselves to reason, we do not try to rule over it. Chapter 36. Who would believe that the body will rise again, and then make his own body a tomb by eating other human bodies? The same people cannot believe that our bodies will rise again, and also eat those bodies as though they will never rise. They cannot believe that the earth will give back the bodies buried in it, but that bodies buried inside a person who ate them will not also be required back. The opposite makes far more sense. People who think they will never have to give an account for how they lived, whether well or badly, may dare to do anything. People like that do not believe in the resurrection. They think the soul dies with the body and is put out like a flame. But we believe that nothing escapes God's examination. We also believe that the body will be punished together with the soul if the body served the soul's unreasonable desires and sinful cravings. Because we believe this, it is not likely that we would commit even the smallest sin. Now, someone may think it is complete nonsense to believe that a body can be formed again after it has decayed, broken apart, dissolved, and been reduced to nothing. But even if someone thinks our belief is foolish, he still cannot fairly accuse us of wickedness. At most, he can accuse us of being mistaken. If we deceive ourselves by this belief, we harm no one else. Also, Christians are not the only ones who believe that bodies will rise again. Many philosophers have held the same idea, but this is not the right time to prove that point. If I discussed it now, I might seem to bring in subjects that do not belong to the present case. I would have to speak about things known by the mind and things known by the senses, and explain the nature of each. I would have to argue that what has no body is older than what has a body. I would have to argue that what is known by the mind comes before what is known by the senses, even though we first became aware of the things we sense. Physical things are formed from what has no body when what is known by the mind is joined to matter, and what is known by the senses is formed from what is known by the mind. According to Pythagoras and Plato, nothing prevents bodies from being formed again after they have broken apart. They can be formed again from the same elements from which they were first made. But let us leave the discussion of the resurrection for another time. Chapter 37. You are upright, self-controlled, kind, and worthy of your rule, both by nature and by education. I have now answered each accusation against us. I have shown that we are devoted to God, gentle, and self-controlled in spirit. So now please turn your royal attention toward us with approval. Who deserves to receive what they ask more than people like us? We pray for your government. We pray that, as is right, you may receive the kingdom from father to son. We pray that your empire may grow and increase and that all people may come under your rule. This is also good for us. Then we may live a peaceful and quiet life. We may willingly do everything that is commanded of us.